Okay, we are going to begin tonight's meeting with a public hearing to approve changes to Chapter 2150 of the county's Code of Ordinances regulating the use and display and sale of cannabis and cannabis-derived products in the county. Cigar?
Good evening, Commissioners. Thank you for having us. We have prepared a short presentation. We did present this at our Health, Housing, and Human Services Committee in early October, but we thought it would be worth kind of just revisiting the main components of the ordinance. So with me, I have Pahua Moa, one of our community health specialists. And again, my name is Shagar Chowdhury. I'm an associate director within public health. All right, so just to kind of focus on and kind of hone in what we're going to talk about today, we're going to go over purpose and intent of the ordinance real quick. We're going to also discuss registration and what that kind of entails in terms of fees and things like that. We're going to talk about just revisiting the limits of how many cannabis retail businesses are within the county, talk about temporary cannabis events and some of the requirements around those, and then general enforcement and regulation and penalty that are associated with items like age compliance checks and things of that nature. And then we're also going to want to talk about communication strategies kind of moving forward as this ordinance is passed and as we continue to kind of visit additional topics around cannabis. We know this is just, again, another slice of the pie here that we're trying to tackle, and we'll continue to bring items as they come forward. So I want to also thank, this has been an extremely big collaborative effort. Again, the legislation itself is a 300-page piece of legislation, so there's a lot to unpack. So not only just within county departments kind of all working together on this, I want to thank our cities and townships for their partnership around this and their collaboration around this, sharing resolutions with us and kind of moving forward with this process with us. So it's been extremely helpful. I also want to thank all of you. You gave us early guidance when this all kind of started around kind of our general philosophy and direction to move with. So that's very helpful as we're kind of, again, unpacking all of this kind of bit by bit. So with that, I'm going to pass it to PH here to kind of talk a little bit of the details of the ordinance.
All right, thanks, Shagar. So the very first, section in the ordinance goes over purpose and intent. So just as a reminder that state legislation actually authorizes local jurisdictions to regulate and protect public health and safety. And so Olmsted County, being proactive and recognizing that there are unintended risks and unintended access and use to cannabis products, especially to our young people and vulnerable populations, decided to be, again, proactive in enacting this ordinance, again, to protect public health and safety. So just wanted to start off with that. Moving on to the registration of cannabis businesses. So in accordance with state law, Olmsted County has limited cannabis retailer registrations to 1 per 12,500 residents. This equates to this equates to 14 maximum retailers. And to be considered for registration, retailers must have a license through the Office of Cannabis Management, or OCM, and you'll hear me say that. So it could be a micro business with a retailer endorsement, a meso business with a retailer endorsement, or just a cannabis retailer. Retailers are required to register with the county. So in addition to having a license through OCM, they have to register with the county, otherwise they can face a $2,000 penalty. And then the fees that we have in Olmsted County here, you can see in that table, there's no application fee, and that's, again, per state statute. We aren't allowed to have an application fee, but there is an initial registration fee of $500, and that covers the first 2 years. And then we also have a renewal registration fee, which will take effect year 3 and then every year after, which is $1,000. We have also set the hours of operation for cannabis retailers from 10 a.m. to 9 p.m., and that's 7 days a week. All right, on cannabis or temporary cannabis events. So we're actually replicating the process that we are using for temporary liquor licensing. And we're doing this because we know that it has been successful in the past. And this has been a multidisciplinary approach across the county. So lots of departments involved. But again, we know that it works. So the steps for event organizers, if they want to have a temporary cannabis event, 1, they must first apply for a temporary cannabis event license through OCM. Once they get that approved and that's good, then they can apply for a temporary cannabis permit through the county. So they have to go through both. Who can apply for a temporary cannabis permit? I know this is another slide, but essentially cannabis businesses, except for 3. So there's only 3 that cannot apply for a temporary cannabis event. Again, they cannot apply. And these are cannabis testing facilities, a low-potency edible hemp manufacturer, and a low-potency edible retailer. Those 3 cannot apply, and that's just per state statute. There are also some standards that permit holders have to meet. So for example, I'm just going to give you a couple of what these standards are. You can see the full section in section 2157, subdivision C. But for example, people cannot smoke or vape on the event grounds. The event cannot go outside of the normal business hours of 10 to 9. And then lastly, anyone who attempts to purchase a cannabis product they have to check the ID of anyone trying to attempt to purchase. So those are just some of the standards that permit holders must meet under the temporary cannabis events. Enforcement and penalty. So the first one that's up is violations. And this first bullet point talks about the violation of use in public places. So this is referring to like individuals. If someone was using cannabis in a public place, they could get a $300 fine, which is considered a petty misdemeanor, which is not criminal in nature. And then that second bullet point talking about violation of any provision of the ordinance, that's essentially referring to businesses or retailers. And if they do that, it's considered a misdemeanor. For compliance checks, there's 2 bullet points here. Public health is responsible for doing the age verification checks, so very similar to like tobacco checks where we're making sure that retailers are not selling to anyone under 21 or minors. That would be the responsibility of public health. And then OCM is responsible for product compliance checks, so making sure that the products that are on the shelves now are legal to be sold and they're in the correct packaging, things like that. So there are 2 different pieces there under compliance checks. 30-day suspension. So this takes place if a retailer violates any piece of the ordinance or they pose an immediate threat to public health. And an example of that is, again, if they sold to a minor, that could be an immediate threat to public health. What happens is their registration would be suspended and they could no longer sell up to 30 days. Essentially what happens there is we would then report that to OCM and then work with them to get that resolved with the retailer. Another thing I want to point out too is civil penalties. These retailers can be referred to OCM for any administrative order and penalties or a county civil nuisance. So just wanted to mention that. And then the responsible entities for enforcement and penalty are the Sheriff's Office and Public Health. All right, communication strategies. This is important to us. We want to make sure that we are being transparent in what we're doing. And so we do have a communications plan that includes a press release. There's web articles after the ordinance is approved. We have social media posts, Gov delivery that we use to send emails out to folks. And then we will also be updating our cannabis frequently asked questions or FAQ on the website. And of course, our social media posts will be scattered throughout the year to again remind folks and people about any updates that we might have. Here are references. The first one actually is a guide for local governments on adult use cannabis, which we base the ordinance on, and then that's the OCM's website.
Are there any questions?
So, PH, you said that Sheriff's Department and Public Health are the enforcement agencies, so even in a municipality, the police department are not an enforcement agency on this?
Is that right, Tom? Yeah.
No, I think the sheriff is the enforcement agency, even in the small cities. But you have to keep in mind that so far there are only 2 that have identified that they want to retain responsibility for registration and not delegate that to the county. So at least in those jurisdictions, they're going to be fully responsible for all enforcement matters.
But the city of Rochester then, because they're giving that to us, basically, their law enforcement is not going to enforce this law.
We need to have a discussion with the city of Rochester, frankly, on that point, I think, going forward.
Yeah, I would think so. I mean, 'cause we're not the law enforcement agency, primary one in the city of Rochester. So.
Right.
Okay. Any other questions before I open the public hearing? Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't see anything, and maybe this is intentional, relative to where a cannabis business can be located relative to an area that might be trending toward youth activities, be it a high school, be it a rec center, be it a park. I know you can't smoke in a park, but can you sell it across the street from a park, that kind of a thing? Are we going to address that at any time, or is that going to be done by the cities or the townships relative to their own ordinances?
Yeah, so that's kind of encompassed in the zoning ordinances. So Olmsted County did update their zoning ordinance to reflect that, and we did the maximum distances allowable by state statute. Also, then local jurisdictions are updating their zoning ordinances to kind of reflect what they want to do for that, for those distances.
Okay.
So like the city of Rochester has also updated their land development code, for instance, to indicate those same distances, those maximum distances.
And I believe it's like 1,000 feet from a school and 500 feet from a daycare or residential.
Okay.
Yep.
From a school, so, but nothing about parks or?
No,
rec
parks as
center?
well, so anything like where a
Okay.
child, essentially a child could be present, yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
So a cannabis consumer might assume that if they were to attend a cannabis event, they would be allowed or encouraged to smoke or vape cannabis at that event. But that is prohibited according to these ordinances. Could you go into some more depth about why smoking or vaping cannabis would not be allowed at a cannabis event?
Sure, I can talk a little bit about it, and then Abby, if you have anything to add. But that, so they can consume edibles or cannabis products, but we prohibited smoking and vaping because of the secondhand smoke that could go to others who don't want that. And so that is, I believe, one of the reasons. Was there anything else that I'm missing?
And possibly because the event could be in a location that's already prohibited according to the, great, yep. Thank you.
Okay. All right, I think that's all. So
Thank you.
we will open the public hearing. Would anybody like to speak for or against this ordinance? Would anybody like to speak for or against this ordinance? Third and last time. Anybody would like to speak for or against this ordinance? I'll entertain a motion. Okay, we got a motion, a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, well, the public hearing is closed, so I'll entertain a motion, and then we can have discussion if desired.
Move to adopt the approved changes to chapter 2150 of the county code.
Second?
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All right, hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. All right, thank you. All right, next up is the consent agenda. A, approve Olmsted County Board minutes from November 5th, 2024. B, approve the recording of the right-of-way plats for CASA 21 reconstruction project. C, approve the recording of right-of-way plats for the CASA 44 and TH 14 interchange project. D, revoke existing agreement and authorize new revocable license agreement with Northbridge Church. E, approve write-off of uncollectible balances for D&O Community Corrections. F, approve write-off of uncollectible balances for Human Services. G, approve utility easement at County Public Works subdivision. H, approve amendment to County Planning Advisory Commission bylaws. I, accept the Minnesota Department of Health Cannabis and Substance Use Prevention Program funds. J, approve joint powers agreement for laboratory services with the Minnesota Department of Health. K, approve the 2024 purchase of services agreement with Family Service Rochester supporting implementation of a family resource center. L, approve the acceptance of child care continuous licensing joint powers agreement with the Minnesota Department of Human Services.
Move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
The Chair, can I just offer, you went through a long list here. The public should know that, you know, the board has had out, you know, pretty extensive discussion on all of these, perhaps except the minutes, at previous meetings, and so we just don't flippantly approve these without discussion.
Correct. Okay, I have a motion, a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. All right, short meeting tonight. Board and committee reports. I'll just go down go down the line. Greg, do you have anything to offer?
Well, the MICA, which we are, belong to an organization of like counties that are more metropolitan, less rural. And the executive director has resigned, so Commissioner Senjum is on the search committee for the new executive director, but they are very helpful for the urban counties. So that would be my report.
Okay, thank you. Ryan?
Yeah, I don't really have a report. We've got a AMC meeting with EMS coming up, and that's tomorrow. And then next week we have a extension office meeting. So I don't have a report.
Okay, Dave?
I would just offer, the county is, I think we all know, is pretty involved in veteran services. We had I thought a very well-attended Veterans Day program at the Event Center on the 11th, and the place was literally full. I don't know if that's 400 or 500, but a nice turnout to honor our veterans.
Great. Laurel?
I do have a couple committee reports. Commissioner Tyne and I, we serve on the First Homes Board, and I thought I would give an overview about First Homes and the Community Land Trust model for the benefit of folks in attendance and anyone listening online, and for my fellow commissioners. So the First Homes First Homes organization is based on a community land trust model, which dedicates properties to a community land trust in perpetuity. So it's a way to create permanent affordable housing. And when we attend the monthly meetings, we get financial statements, projects that are in the works, sales activity, community outreach, community partners, social media activity updates, monthly newsletter for the Community Land Trust homeowners, including homeowner tips and reminders and opportunities. And I think it's interesting to know that the First Homes team is constantly looking for to acquire properties to incorporate into the Community Land Trust. And that's whether to build, rebuild, rehab, or sell a home that requires very little work. And the CLT model also offers down payment assistance and a gap loan that can be repaid when you sell your home. So it's a really affordable, accessible way for income qualified people and families to become homeowners when homeownership would otherwise be out of reach. At our most recent meeting, we had a presentation from a local builder named Matt Durand. He's an educator and director of the RCTC Carpentry program. It's a one-year program. It's 32 credits. They partner with community, for instance, Two Rivers Habitat for Humanity and First Homes. The program has financial aid available for its participants because there's a huge need for carpenters and framers in our community. And it's just one way that we are encouraging people to go into the trades as a profession. This carpentry program, the students build a house. They build a grade on slab, 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom house, and they learn about safety and blueprint reading, framing, roofing, drywall, cabinetry, siding, and much more. And it's just a great example of a way that our community is helping to meet the need and create opportunity for folks to go into the trades and into the carpentry profession in particular.
Thank you for your report.
Yep.
All right, we have reached the end of our meeting. I'm looking for a motion to adjourn. Maura,